Each year, in consultation with the 50th reunion class, we identify, select, recruit someone to give a charge to the incoming members of the Old Students Club. Happily, the person selected actually was enthusiastic about taking this on. As a matter of fact, he said to me just a few minutes ago that if you all have as much fun listening to him as he's had preparing this, we're in for a real treat. The person who's not quite as excited is Harrison Merrill, because he's got to follow our speaker and respond on behalf of the class of 65. So if you will, give a warm Old Students Club welcome to the best definition I know of the Renaissance man, Wade Marvin Smith.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you so much, Doug, and hello to everybody. Hello to all of the old students. Hello to the class of 65 especially. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me to come. It's lovely to share the podium with all these wonderful people. Betty Ray McCain at one time had the misfortune to sit and hear one of my speeches. And when it was over, she came rushing over to me, and I thought she was going to say something really complimentary. And she said, "Wade, when you finished that speech, there was not a dry seat in the house." That's Betty Ray McCain. This is such a festive and beautiful room of people. And then we just visited the people downstairs. Welcome to all of you folks downstairs. And it just fills you with spirit. It just fills your heart with spirit. It reminds me of my hometown, Stanley County, Albemarle. We went to a little tiny clapboard Baptist church. There was a man in that church named Mose Frick, and he, I think, probably couldn't read and write. I don't know for sure, but he was an older man, and he would get so filled with the Spirit from time to time that in the middle of the sermon, he would just get up and walk down to the front, and the minister, of course, would stop, and he would say, "Brothers and sisters, ain't we eating the grapes from the top of the vineyard today?" And that's the way it feels. We're eating the grapes from the top of the vineyard. So it's great to be with you. I'd like to start by telling you three stories in a row. And so here's the first story. A minister and his wife were sitting one Saturday morning at breakfast, and she turned to her husband and she said, "I'm going to go in town, dear, for a few minutes, and while I'm gone, I hope you will not look under the bed." And so, of course, as she drove out of the driveway, he made a dive under the bed. He just couldn't stand it. And under the bed, he found a shoebox. And in the shoebox, there were 3 eggs and $10,000 in cash. He thought, what in the world could that be? So when she got back, he immediately said to her, "Dear, I'm so sorry, but I had to look under the bed. And when I looked under the bed, I found a shoebox. And in the shoebox, there were 3 eggs and $10,000 in cash. What in the world is that about?" She said, "Well, when we got married 20 years ago, I made up my mind that every time you preached a bad sermon, I'd put an egg in that box." He said, "Well, 20 years, 3 eggs, not too bad. But," he said, "how about the $10,000? She said, "Oh, well, when I get a dozen, I'd sell them." Now, the second story I want to tell you is about a man who went out drinking one night with his friends. And while he was out drinking with his friends, he fell into a barrel of beer and drowned. His friends went home to his house and told his wife, and she said, "Oh, dear, I hope he went fast." And they said, "Oh, no, ma'am, he didn't go fast. He got out 3 times to pee." Now, the third story is this. One night, a man was sitting reading the paper, and there was a knock at the door. He went to the door, and there was no one there. He looked left and right. He couldn't see anyone. He looked down, and on the doormat, there was a little snail. He was irritated that he had been interrupted. So he reached down and picked up the snail, and he threw it as hard as he could out in the yard. And he went back to his reading. And 3 years passed. And there was a knock at the door. He went to the door, and there was no one there. And he looked down, and the snail was down there, and the snail said, "What the heck was that all about?" So now there are 3 stories, and I didn't tell those 3 stories just to tell 3 jokes, because they have a common theme. And the common theme is that they play with the idea of the passage of time. The minister's wife took 20 years to collect all those eggs. The man who fell in the barrel of beer didn't go fast. He went slow. And the snail took 3 years to get back across the yard to the door again. So there is the common theme, the passage of time. And all last night at our meeting and all of today, I've been hearing you say, "What in the world ever happened to all the years? Where on earth did they go?" And so what more appropriate theme for a discussion with the Old Students Club than the whole idea of the passage of time. So I want to talk today for just a few minutes about the whole idea of time. What is it? Did we make it up? Did we just use it to count? Where did the time go? And as for the class of 65, hello to you out there. It's amazing to you, I know, that since you left here, 50 springs have come to Chapel Hill. Can you believe that? 50 times the Arboretum has bloomed. 50 times since you left here. The boys have run out onto the field at Kenan Stadium to inaugurate a new season. And 50 times down on Morgan Creek, the mayflies have hatched on the bottom of the creek in the warm spring sun, floated to the surface of the creek, dried their wings, and flown up into the air. And as I understand it, they are of the order of the Ephemeroptera, and that's from the Greek ephemeros, meaning lasting one day. I wanted to throw that in because the people over at Duke wouldn't know that. And certainly the people at NC State would never have heard of it. But they don't have time to eat. They just mate and die. They live one day. So they hatch, they fly up into the air, and they mate and die. Not a bad life. But I've always thought if you could isolate one and talk to it, I've never actually done this, but I've thought about it. If you could talk to one, they think they live a long, long time. And if you could isolate one, he would say to you, "I've been thinking about retirement and the issues associated with retirement and retirement options." So they live just one day. They don't live to see the sunset. Well, let me think a little bit more about time with you. Down at the Moorhead Planetarium, they will show us the Horsehead Nebula. It's a beautiful nebula out in the constellation of Orion. And when you look at it, it's a perfect horse head. And you want it to move. You want it so badly to turn and face you. But we've known about it for about 100 years, and we haven't seen any motion at all, no movement whatsoever of it. Even though we want it to turn. The whole idea is we don't live long enough to see it turn. It is turning. It will make a complete revolution. Astronomers say it will take 5 million years for it to complete its turn. So during our lifetimes, we don't see any movement. Just like the mayflies, who don't see the sunset. So how like mayflies we are. They live a day, they don't see the sunset. We don't live long enough to see the horsehead turn. Well, so it's only been a day since you left here, the class of 65, and when all of you left here, it's just been a day. It has gone by like a watch in the night, as the book says. And yet you have done so much. I know you have, because I know almost everyone in this room. You have worked hard. You raised your children. You said goodbye to your parents. You have been busy with work. You have lost so much and you have gained so much. And it's interesting to think about how you got to Chapel Hill all those years ago, and especially the class of 65, thinking about how you came to Chapel Hill all those years ago. There's a sports drink commercial out there, and it says at the end, "We are all just a kid from somewhere." You were all just a kid from somewhere when on some day you walked out the door of your house with your suitcase with a few things that you had in it. You walked down the steps and down the driveway, and you waved goodbye to your mother and father, not realizing at the time how serious and how permanent that was, and you were gone. I wish we could go around the room and hear each of your stories, because you have an individual story about that very moment I wish we could hear. I'll share mine briefly with you. I had bought a 1937 Chevrolet from my high school coach for $125. It didn't have a passenger seat, so I just put a kitchen chair. It not bolted down. It was a straight back kitchen chair. You can imagine that passing inspection now, couldn't you? But my friend Edward Brunson and I got in my 1937 Chevrolet, and we drove to Chapel Hill, and seriously, we stopped twice to put oil in it. But I didn't know about parking in Chapel Hill. I had nowhere to put it when I got here. But anyway, that's another story. Since I hoped and hoped and hoped to make the football team, I was trying out for the freshman football team. I was placed in Winston Dorm, where all the freshman football boys were placed. And this is a scene I'll never forget. These big, strong boys, Pennsylvania, New York, and Virginia, big, powerful boys, in every room, it seems, they were sitting in there with tears in their eyes. There's a little 45 record player and a little 45 record on it. And on that record is a song, "See the pyramids along the Nile, watch the sunrise on a tropic isle. Just remember, darling, all the while, you belong to me." You remember that song? These boys had been wrenched away from their girlfriends, from their families, from their homes. How on earth anybody survives that, I don't know. But somehow we all get through it. About 2 or 3 weeks after I got here, I took my roommates, Charlie Gray and Truett Lineberger, home with me to visit, and my dad was the song leader in our little Baptist church. When we entered the church, my dad was leading a song. And Truett Lineberger said to me, "Hey, your dad's got my tie on." Such was life as my roommate. It was, as you will recall, difficult to be a freshman. It was so discouraging for me. And again, I'm just telling you my story. I wish I could hear yours. But I walked a little path by the cemetery over across from Luncheon every day going to football practice. There were as many people who were out for the team playing my position as we had on my whole team in my hometown. And I would be discouraged. And one day passing that cemetery, I saw a little tombstone down there, and I stopped to read the inscription. And it said, "They fail, and they alone who have not striven." So I thought, well, you know what? The only way you can fail is not to try. So that's a little bit about my story. I know you're thinking about your story of how you came to be here. One of the great philosophers has said that life can only be understood looking backwards, but we have to live it forwards. That's an interesting idea. We can look back, and when we look back, we can understand our journey. But we have to look forward as we live. So looking backwards, as we sit here now, looking backward for you, looking backward for me, what stands out? What is it that stands out in your memory? For me, there's no force in my life that has come close to the force for good that the University of North Carolina has been in my life. It dwarfs my church. It dwarfs my high school. It dwarfs my work. The impact of the University of North Carolina on my life, I simply cannot measure. The smartest people I've ever known I met here. They were kids who came from the crossroads of North Carolina, from the west, from the east, little towns like Delco, such natural, beautiful knowledge. The shaping process was almost like a chisel was taken to us and changed us. We were sculpted. We were exposed to people from many different backgrounds. And in that maelstrom of ideas, we kept some of our thoughts and our ideas, but many of our ideas were challenged, and we saw that they were wrong. We learned that many of our ideas are not eternal. It was here that our hopes and dreams emerged. It was here that we started to formulate the ingredients needed to have a useful life and a happy life. And I will say this. My mind and my heart was empowered here. We're empowered here. I know your minds and your hearts were empowered here. So now, having looked back, speaking to the class of 65, our newest class, must we feel now, and this is all of us who are not in the class of 65 speaking to you, because this is our challenge to the class of 65. Is it all over now and done? Is this it? Is it time now for you, having had your 50th anniversary here, to find a good groove on the front porch in a rocking chair and spend your years in nostalgia? Are you through? Is this a fond farewell to activity? You may remember the book, The Spoon River Anthology by Edgar Lee Masters. Remarkable book. And in that book, the writer goes to the cemetery of a small town, Spoon River, and interviews everybody from the grave. So what do the people in the grave say? Well, if you go to that same cemetery I walked past when I was a freshman, out there, lying in that cemetery, as you well know, you'll see your heroes of the past, the people who spoke to you, the people who taught you. Hugh Leffler, Dr. Bernard Boyd, William Friday, J. Penrose Harlan, all of these people, Frank Graham, the people that we revere and think of so much and turn to. If we turn to them now, what would they say to us about what to do for the class of 65 now that you've had your 50th anniversary? Or, for example, Chancellor Robert House, a man that I love dearly, and I know you did too. If we had him here now, if we had Chancellor Robert House here now, and we said, what do you say to the class of 65? He would take out his harmonica, and he would play two songs. Do you remember what they were? His songs, of course, the words to the song were the title of the song. All the words of the song would be in the title. The first song he would play would be, "Peekaboo, you rascal, you, come out from behind that chair." But the second one is the one that interests me the most now, and I've heard him play it, and I know you have, 100 times. "Roll on, boys, don't roll so slow. The sun will go down, and you'll roll no more." Do you remember that one? At every pep rally, at every gathering, he would play, "Roll on, boys, don't roll so slow. The sun will go down, and you'll roll no more." And that is our theme, the passage of time. That we should say no. The years that we are facing are the best years. These years now are the best years. They would say, look to the future. Time is so precious. So, take up a new musical instrument. Take up a new language. Go read the great books. Make a list. Form a band. Restore a car. Paint a picture. Write your biography. But all of us, speaking to you, the class of 65, this is our charge to you. This is a new beginning, a great beginning, and drink life down. So Tennyson would say, "Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world." But a poem I like better than that one is a more modern poem. It's Mary Oliver's poem, "A Summer Day." Do any of you know that poem? It's a beautiful poem. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself up out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar from my hand. The one who is looking at me with her complex eyes. The one who has raised her pale arms up and washed her face thoroughly. The one who just dried her wings and floated away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to listen and be blessed. I know how to kneel down in the grass. I know how to walk in a field, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have been doing all day? Doesn't everything die too soon and at last? Tell me, what are you going to do with your one wild, wonderful life? What are you going to do with your one wild, wonderful life? Or there's maybe a more poignant way to put it. In the movie Harold and Maude, did anybody see that movie? It's a cult movie. It's my favorite movie. Maud is 80 years old, and Harold is a 21-year-old boy who fell in love with her. And it is time for her, she says, to die. And she is giving him her advice for life. And this is what all of us say to you in the class of 65, is what Maud said to Harold. Live, Harold, live. Otherwise, you won't have anything to talk about in the locker room. That's our advice to you, the class of 65. Thank you very much.
I was told it was going to be very difficult to respond to Wade Smith. My date, Marty Jacobs, says that if you don't have something to say that is good, sit down and be silent. So I'm going to sit down. I'd like to start off by bragging on the GAA and our class. I'm proud to announce that our class has broken the previous reunion record by 20%, thanks to Linda Shirk, the GAA staff, and the great reunion committee for the class of 65. And this is just the beginning, because we're going to help the class of 66 do the same thing. But Doug, I want to thank you for Linda Shirk and your staff and the way that they've created a magnificent reunion that brings chills as we go around and we get reacquainted with each other. And I want to respond to Wade. And Wade, you're absolutely right. We are really at the new beginning with the class of 65. I understand that we have someone here from the class of 35, so we've got 30 great years to go. And I look forward to it. For a moment, I would like, if you would, all of the members of the class of 65 who are in the room, would you mind standing up with your significant others? All of you here, please. And thank you. Stay standing. I want all of you to take a moment, and I want you to look around, and I want you to enjoy this. This is the last time in a crowd of 700 we are the babies. And before you sit down, I would like for all of us to applaud those who have come before us and given us their wisdom and given us their experience and given us their words. And we hope to pass that on to those who follow us as you've done for us. And we appreciate your great support for the University of North Carolina and for us. Our class, let's give them an applause. Please be seated. Thank you. One of the great things that our class has done in connection with this reunion is to bridge the gap with the class of 2015. We have answered the challenge. We were told that their senior class project was to build a Habitat for Humanity house for an employee of the University of North Carolina and his family. And they undertook this project under the leadership of Sasha Seymour, the class president. And they reached out to us and they asked us to help them financially to finish the house. And I'm pleased to respond that our class responded with great enthusiasm and participation. And I want you to know also that to answer questions, some of the class of 2015 are outside. They'll answer questions. They will receive more contributions if you'd like to give them. But I'd also like to announce an anonymous donor this week agreed to take care of any shortfall, so there'll be no shortfall for the class of 2015, and that anonymous donor wanted to honor our class of 1965. In the preparation for the reunion over the past year to year and a half, almost all of the classmates that I have talked with, I've met with, I've emailed with, have talked about a subject that's kind of always the elephant in the room these days. And Wade alluded to that, and I'd like to make a few comments on that. And that's the academic and the athletic scandal. Do we wish that it had not happened? Absolutely. Do we lament the fact that it did happen? Absolutely. Does this define the University of North Carolina? Absolutely not. What defines the University of North Carolina and what makes it great is really not the beautiful campus that we have here that we all enjoy when we come back. It's not the bricks and mortar of the beautiful old and new buildings, but it's the dedication and the tenure of the faculty and the administration who have taught the tens of thousands of us who have graduated from the University of North Carolina, and together we are North Carolina. And we have learned from this, and in the latter stages we have done it with transparency, and I can promise you that the processes, the procedures, and the standards are in place where this won't happen again. This will make us stronger, not weaker. No institution and no individual is perfect. And no individual and no institution should be judged by the standard of perfection because it's unachievable. But together as a university, and that's what we are because we are the university, and as we look forward, we don't need to anymore dwell on this problem. It has been handled. They've set the processes and the standards so that it will not occur in this administration and this faculty and this athletic department, and future ones aren't going to let it happen again. And it doesn't tarnish one iota what the University of North Carolina stands for, what our traditions have been, how we feel about the university. And I, for one, and I know you share this with me, I am proud, Wade, to be a graduate from the University of North Carolina. I am proud of what we stand for. I am proud of the perfection that we seek. And together, if we have other problems, we'll solve them. Let's let this issue go. Finally, I would like to thank my class for the privilege and the honor of serving as your permanent class president for the past 50 years. As Wade said, we go forward with optimism. It's wonderful, the things, the memories that we have, the reacquaintances that we've made, the new acquaintances that we made here, but this is just the new beginning. We've got those who follow us so that we can help them enjoy what we've enjoyed, and we've got our own future that we need to look at with great optimism. Thank you all.
Harrison, some of your classmates told me that you were really quiet when you came to Carolina. You certainly found your voice. So now I get to share some announcements, a little bit of information. Harrison, you gave the Alumni Association and Linda a lot of credit. Linda does deserve a lot of credit, but we've long believed with reunions that if you build it, you will come. So it was you and your classmates who really did the calling and the heavy lifting to make sure that there would be people here with whom you wanted to celebrate. And that is not something that the staff could have done. So we're grateful to all of you for that. A word to the class of 65. Those medallions we want you to wear with pride, but it's not a requirement that you wear them to bed this weekend. We would like you to wear them on Sunday with your blue robes. If there's anyone in the class who's giving second thoughts to whether or not you want to process, those who are in the room who have done that previously will assure you that it will be the highlight of your weekend, so you do not want to miss that opportunity. Now, the class of 65 is not the only class in the room that's actually celebrating a reunion. Wade and his classmates are celebrating their 55th. The 60th class is celebrating their 55th. The 55th class is celebrating their 60th. Sophie Cody wants you to know that she's celebrating her 75th. But Sophie is not the senior person in the room today. We have 4 gentlemen from the classes of the 30s. That's right. George Hooks from 35, Herbert Stallings from 37, Dillard Griffin from 38, and Jack Hughes from 39, right up here at this table. '65, your goal is to get right up here. And you've got 30 years to do it. The Royal Room will remain open all afternoon for those in 65. You may also pick up your Old Students Club certificates right out these doors when we finish, and for the next 30 minutes later they'll be at the registration table. As most of you know, James Lee Love from the class of 1884 established the endowment in the 1930s for this, and there's a book by him outside to 60 years since. We encourage you to take that. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge my immediate predecessor, a friend to many of you, and someone who played his harmonica with Chancellor House on many of occasions, and he too is up here at the front table, Clarence Whitefield. Clarence? Any of you in this class of 65 who've decided that you're going to ride or walk and don't need the parking pass, if you would see Linda Shirk, she is confident she could put that parking pass to good use. But don't give it up if you need it. In a few minutes, we're going to adjourn, recess, and some of you are going to want to go to the Blue Zone for the afternoon programs. Now, you may go out these doors, but you should know that there are a few steps at that end. So if you want to avoid steps, don't go out those doors. Go out these doors. You can work your way around. That's where the programs will begin. There's also a walking tour that begins at 1:30. There are campus buses as well. There's the Andy Griffith slideshow that is downstairs as soon as we can convert the Dowd Harris room. There's a bell tower climb, if any of you are so inclined, from 3 till 5:30. The shuttles will continue to circulate from the Alumni Circle. A word of parking: if you leave the Ram's Head, just know that when you come back, you will again be charged, so just don't be surprised. The class of 65, your photo will be promptly at 5:45 right outside here, and casual attire is certainly appropriate. Now, this is the moment all of you have been waiting for, because we all get to sing our favorite song. And we'll be curious as to whether or not those in the downstairs will hear us from here or whether we'll hear them from here. But if all of you would join, those of you who are able, stand. And if you want to get close enough to sway with some folks, that's perfectly fine, as long as you're swaying with people with whom you want to sway. And most importantly is to remain vertical while you sway. And as always, you may end this song with your own favorite word. Hark the sound of Tar Heel voices ringing clear and true, singing Carolina's praises, shouting NCU. Hail to the brightest star of all, clear its radiant shine. Carolina, priceless gem, receive all praises thine. For I'm a Tar Heel born, I'm a Tar Heel bred, and when I die, the Tar Heel dead. So it's rah-rah, Carolina, rah-rah, Carolina, rah-rah, Carolina, rah.